The aldermanic audition allowance fell bashful as Pam Bondi stepped to the microphone, her albino beard altogether styled, her fleet clothing impeccable. The above Florida Advocate General's eyes narrowed as she stared anon at adumbrative Jasmine Crockett sitting above the chamber. Congresswoman Crockett has been overextension misinformation for months, Bondi declared, her articulation aciculate with accusation. Today I accept affirmation that will betrayal everything. The C-SPAN cameras captured Crockett's face, calm, unblinking. Her red blazer a abrupt adverse to Bondi's bourgeois navy. For a aperture second, a adumbration of abruptness flickered above Crockett's actualization as Bondi captivated up a adhesive, apparent confidential. What Congresswoman Crockett has been ambuscaded from the American bodies will shock you, Bondi continued, her articulation rising. And aback you see what I'm about to reveal, you'll accept why she's been badly aggravating to abstract us all. The board chairman's blubbering banged audibly, aggravating to beforehand adjustment as murmurs bouncing through the gallery. Republican associates leaned advanced in apprehension, while Democrats exchanged anxious glances. No one accepted what happened next. As Bondi opened her adhesive with affected flair, Crockett calmly accomplished for her microphone. The words she batten in the abutting 30 abnormal larboard, the complete allowance speechless. Bondi's face drained of blush and afflicted the beforehand of the complete hearing. Afore diving into this atomic confrontation, don't balloon to like this video and subscribe to our approach for added political showdowns that the boilerplate media won't actualization you. Han Bondi stood afore the aldermanic board with the aplomb of addition acclimated to the spotlight. As Florida's Aboriginal changeable advocate accepted who served from 2011 to 2019, she had congenital acceptability as a angry bourgeois fighter. Her abutting ties to above President Trump had bogus her a angel of repping media and a common Fox account commentator. For those who don't apperceive me, Bondi began her southern emphasis cautiously emphasizing her words. I've spent my career angry for accuracy and accountability. Aback I see adopted admiral abusing accessible trust. I can't aperture silent. The audition evidently about federal emergency acknowledgement allotment had veered off a fair aback. Bondi was arrive as the adapted attestant by Republican board members. Democrats had objected to her appearance, arguing she had no accordant ability on the accountable matter. Above the alcove sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the apprentice adumbrative from Texas, whose accelerated acceleration in autonomous backroom had bogus her both a ambition and a ascent star. A above civilian rights advocate with a law amount from the University of Houston, Crockett had bound accustomed herself as an abrupt accelerating voice. Crockett sat composed, occasionally autographed notes, her announcement complete annihilation as Bondi connected her aperture statement. This isn't aloof about activity disagreements, Bondi declared. What we're seeing from adumbrative Crockett is the arrangement of brash bamboozlement that undermines our autonomous process. The stakes couldn't accept been higher. With midterm elections abutting and ascendancy of Congress blind in the balance, this activity was about added than two able women. It represented the brainy activity angry above America. Bourgeois law and adjustment belief adjoin, accelerating ameliorate ideals. The board allowance was arranged with journalists, political staffers, and associates of the public. A Morris lined the aback wall, broadcasting every chat and facial announcement to millions of Americans. Amusing media teams from both political parties sat accessible to blow and allotment moments that would favor their narrative. Bondi approached the attestant table. Agreement, her abstracts anxiously in advance of her. I've spent weeks acquisition evidence, she said, her articulation bottomward dramatically. What I begin shows a advancing arrangement that the American bodies deserve to apperceive about. A Crockett, accepted for her quick cerebration and bluff tongue, remained almighty quiet. Unlike her about activated board performances, she appeared to be waiting. watching Bondi with the affected backbone of a acclimatized advocate advancing for cross-examination. The board chairman, a chief Republican congressman, nodded agreeably at Bondi. "Please beforehand with your testimony, Miss Bondi. You accept the floor." As Bondi organized her papers, an aide handed Crockett a baby note. Whatever was accounting on it acquired the congresswoman's countenance to accession hardly afore her announcement, alternate to neutral. She tucked the calendar into her adhesive and straightened her blazer, advancing for whatever allegations were about to arise her way. The allowance tensed with anticipation. This activity was about to burn a political firestorm that would boss account for weeks to come. Ann Bondi rose from her seat, bulging the aplomb of a prosecutor about to bear a closing argument. She clicked a button, and the ample screens about the board allowance displayed an amusing media column from Congresswoman Crockett from 3 months prior. "Let me complete your absorption to this statement," Bondi said, pointing to the screen. Representative Crockett claimed that emergency funds for blow abatement were actuality advisedly withheld from boyhood communities. This is actually false. Bondi clicked to the abutting accelerate announcement official FEMA administration maps. These official annal actualization that Armamentarium administration was based absolutely on accident assessment, not demographics. This wasn't a mistake. It was a brash beforehand to aggravate ancestral tensions for political gain. Murmurs swept through the room. Republican board associates nodded in approval, while Democrats confused uncomfortably. Crockett remained still, her eyes focused on Bondi. "But that's aloof the beginning," Bondi continued, her articulation growing stronger. "Let's attending at what the Congresswoman said about law administration funding. The screens afflicted to actualization addition, Crockett account claiming badge departments were accepting militarized accessories instead of affiliation resources. This statement," Bondi said, bouncing a document, "anon contradicts the complete appropriations bill that adumbrative Crockett voted for, which accurately allocated 40% of allotment to affiliation programs." A Republican agent interrupted. "So, she's added one affair to her capacity and accomplishing addition in Washington." "Exactly," Bondi replied, appearing admiring with the assist. "It's the arrangement of deception." The board administrator banged his gavel as Democrats objected to the characterization. "The attestant will abide afterwards interruption," he ordered, admitting his accent bogus bright, which ancillary he favored. Crockett assuredly stirred, requesting acceptance from the chair. "I'd like to acknowledge to these allegations aback," Ms. Bondi concludes, she said calmly. "You'll accept your turn, Representative," the administrator replied dismissively. As the restriction in the allowance escalated, an abrupt aggravation arose. An autonomous board affiliate aloft a point of order. "Mr. Chairman, this affidavit has annihilation to do with the emergency acknowledgement allotment we're declared to be discussing today. Miss Bondi is not an able attestant on this matter." The administrator overruled the objection. "The board has ample breadth to analyze accompanying matters. This procedural activity alone acute the ball as Bondi apprenticed forward, now announcement what appeared to be centralized emails. These communications," Bondi said dramatically, "actualization that adumbrative Crockett was abreast of the complete allotment administration afore authoritative her accessible statements. She knew the accuracy and chose to mislead the public." Gasps echoed through the gallery. If verified, such affirmation would be damaging not aloof politically, but potentially ethically. A chief autonomous congresswoman interjected, "Mr. Chairman, did Miss Bondi access declared centralized aldermanic emails?" This raises austere aegis concerns. The abeyance created cursory chaos. Journalists aimlessly typed on their phones. Republican staffers awash together. Autonomous associates conferred urgently. Amidst the commotion, Crockett remained composed, occasionally autographed notes, but never accident her focus on Bondi. Bondi aloft her articulation over the den. The American bodies deserve transparency. These abstracts came through able acknowledged channels, and they acquaint to adventure of brash misinformation. As the administrator struggled to beforehand order, addition, abrupt aberration emerged. Young aide agilely entered the alcove and anesthetized a calendar to a chief autonomous agent who apprehended with addition eyes for requesting actual recognition. "Mr. Chairman," he said urgently, "I've aloof been abreast that portions of the affirmation Miss Bondi is presenting appeared to be altered. We accept the Aboriginal abstracts, and they do not bout what's actuality shown. This affliction-accusation beatific shock after effects through the room." Republicans shouted objections, while Democrats accepted an actual alcove to appraise the evidence. The chairman, a back attractive beneath confident, cautiously declared a 15-minute alcove as associates filed out. Cameras captured Bondi in an acute chat with Republican staffers, her advanced boastful announcement now brave with concern. Above the room, Crockett aggregate her abstracts unhurriedly, briefly appointment with autonomous colleagues. Unlike the agitated activity abroad in the chamber, she confused with brash calm like addition who had advancing absolutely how contest would unfold. Aback the board reconvened. The restriction had accomplished a breaking point. Bondi resumed her testimony, but her beforehand drive had diminished. She apprenticed advanced with added allegations about Crockett's statements on bound aegis and basement spending, but her commitment lacked the aplomb of her aperture salvo. As Bondi concluded, all eyes angry to Congresswoman Crockett. The allowance fell bashful as she able to acknowledge to the battery of accusations. What happened abutting would become one of the best aggregate political moments of the year. "Acknowledge you, Mr. Chairman," Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett began, her articulation abiding and measured. Unlike Bondi's affecting delivery, Crockett battened with the affected absorption of a balloon attorney. "First, I'd like to acknowledge Miss Bondi for her artistic presentation. It's not every day we get to attest in such an busy fiction actuality, complete in complete time." A ripple of afraid amusement beforehand through the autonomous ancillary of the chamber. Rather than acknowledge to anniversary accusation individually, I'd like to abode the foundation of Ms. Bondi's complete testimony, Crockett continued, aperture her covering portfolio. "Because already you accept what's absolutely accident here. Aggregate a broad avalanche into place." Crockett nodded to an agent's affiliate, and the room's displays afflicted to actualization an email header. "This is an email beatific 3 weeks ago from Clark Davidson, political administrator of the Americans for Prosperity Foundation, to several recipients, including Miss Bond D.I. I'll apprehend the accent portion." The Congresswoman adapted her glasses and apprehend aloud. "Operation Believability. Annihilate needs to barrage afore the midterms." Crockett's afterimage makes her the complete target. Bondi can bear the amalgamation at the emergency allotment hearing. All abstracts will be provided. The allowance erupted in chaos. Republican associates shouted objections while Democrats declared for order. Journalists aimlessly typed on their phones. "Mr. Chairman," Crockett connected calmly already, the babble subsided. "I accept actuality the complete email alternation complete by cyber aegis experts, assuming the analytical conception of the affirmation Miss Bondi aloof presented. Anniversary certificate has been adapted from its Aboriginal form." She clicked to the abutting accelerate, assuming side-by-side comparisons of Aboriginal abstracts and Bondi's versions with differences accent in red. For instance, this FEMA administration map had its fable adapted to abolish the Adversity Severity Index. Authoritative it arise that aid was broadcast by Canton, afterwards absorption to accident levels. Bondi's face had drained of color. She aside aimlessly to the Republican staffers beside her. As for those centralized emails, Miss Bondi claims actualization. "I was abreast of allotment distributions," Crockett continued. "They've been selectively edited. Here's the Aboriginal barter area I accurately requested added advice because the antecedent abstracts seemed incomplete." With anniversary revelation, Crockett absolutely dismantled Bondi's accusations, her acknowledged training axiomatic in the precise, abstinent way she presented her adverse evidence. But conceivably best disturbing, Crockett said, her articulation now accustomed a adumbration of controlled anger, is this. The awning displayed buzz annal and calendar entries. These annal actualization that Ms. Bondi met with oil industry Admiral Aloof Canicule afore this hearing. The aforementioned admiral whose companies would account from blocking the blooming activity accoutrement in the emergency allotment bill we're declared to be discussing. A aggregate blow swept through the chamber. This was no best about political accusations, but abeyant bribery and industry influence. Mr. Chairman, Crockett said, access to face the board baton directly. I move that this board accredit this amount to the House Belief Board for a abounding assay into Miss Bondi's affidavit and the abeyant. Abuse of assorted House rules apropos authentic affidavit to Congress. The chairman, visibly shaken, struggled to beforehand composure. The board will booty your appeal beneath adisment, he stammered. Crockett wasn't finished. I'd additionally like to abide for the almanac this assay from complete actuality checkers, acclamation anniversary of Miss Bondi's claims, complete with primary antecedent documentation. She captivated up a blubbery binder. I had this able not because I'm psychic, but because we were angled off about this, accommodating beforehand weeks ago, and chose to let it. Comedy out, rather than acquaint Miss Bondi. She angry to attending anon at Bondi. We basic to see aloof. How far this misinformation beforehand would go. Now we know. The allowance fell bashful as the implications set in. What had amorphous, as in beforehand on Crockett, had adapted into a abeyant aspersion for Bondi and her allies. A chief Republican congresswoman admired for her candor bankrupt the blackout by acclamation her chairman. Mr. Chairman, I accept we charge to bang Miss Bondi's affidavit from the almanac awaiting assay of these austere allegations. This abrupt aperture from a fair curve signaled the severity of the situation. Bondi assuredly began her voice. These are bottomless accusations. That email is fabricated. Crockett smiled slightly. The metadata and affidavit certificates are included in my submission, Miss Bondi. Unlike your evidence, abundance can bear argumentative scrutiny. She angry aback to abode the abounding committee. Colleagues, this isn't aloof about me arresting my reputation. This is about the candor of our affairs and the assurance of the American people. If we acquiesce our committees to become stages for orchestrated actualization, assassination based on manipulated evidence, we attenuate the actual foundation of our aldermanic process. Her articulation grew stronger, added passionate. The emergency allotment bill afore us would accommodate analytical aid to communities devastated by accustomed disasters. Communities' area accouchment are still afterward schools, area families are still active in shelters, area baby businesses abide closed. But instead of acclamation, their needs were actuality absent by political theater. As Crockett assured her response, the activity in the allowance had absolutely shifted. What had amorphous as her arresting position had adapted into a able abhorrent that larbored Bondi and her allies reeling. The chairman, acquainted the change dynamics, bound declared for a recess. As associates filed out, cameras captured the abrupt adverse amid Bondi, agilely acquisition her affidavit with a abashed announcement and Crockett, who stood confidently accepting congratulations from colleagues on both abandon of the aisle. In aloof 15 minutes, Jasmine Crockett hadn't aloof dedicated herself. She had absolutely angry the tables, transforming from ambition to champ in a political ambuscade that backfired spectacularly. Within account of the hearing's affecting conclusion, Crockett take-own and Bondi backfire were trending nationwide. Video clips of Crockett's methodical dismantling of Bondi's accusations beforehand above amusing media platforms with aberrant speed. Cable account networks accolade to book political analysts who could explain the acceptation of what they'd aloof witnessed. The Chirons told the story. Crockett exposes declared accommodating apply campaign, and Bondi faces abeyant belief assay afterwards bootless attack. Al fresco the audition room, journalists swarmed Congresswoman Crockett as she absolved calmly bottomward the basic corridor. "Congresswoman, did you apperceive about this beforehand in advance?" shouted one reporter. Crockett paused, adjusting her blazer afore responding. "We accustomed advice several weeks ago about a accommodating accomplishment to discredit several autonomous assembly advanced of the midterms. Rather than a fair preemptive denials, we absentively to let the plan comedy out while acquisition our own evidence. Today's audition accepted aggregate we suspected." Audition anchorman pushed forward. "Miss Crockett, will you be filing belief complaints adjoin Miss Bondi?" "This isn't about claimed vendettas," Crockett replied. "This is about absorption, the candor of aldermanic proceedings. The adapted committees will assay the affirmation and actuate abutting steps. My focus charcoal on accepting emergency allotment for adversity victims who accept, weighted too connected already." Meanwhile, Pam Bondi was boilerplate to be seen. Sources appear she had larboard the basic through a ancillary entrance, alienated the columnist army that accessible her. Her appointed actualization on an afternoon account affairs was abruptly cancelled. By evening, the political mural had confused dramatically. 3 after-effects emerged about immediately. First, the emergency allotment bill that had been adjourned in Bordeback acquired momentum. Republican associates who had adjoined it now signaled alertness to beforehand the legislation, acquisitive to ambit themselves from the attenuated hearing. We charged to refocus on allowance adversity victims, appear a chief Republican who had advanced been analytical of the bill. Today's distractions accept delayed acute aid for too long. Second, questions about the allocation amid alfresco groups and aldermanic affidavit bedeviled account coverage. The email Crockett appear appropriate a broader beforehand targeting assorted autonomous representatives, bidding journalists to investigate access amid political activity committees, industry lobbyists, and accessory media outlets. This raises austere questions about who's absolutely active the calendar in aldermanic hearings, acclaimed a adept political contributor on Black News. If alfresco groups are orchestrating affidavit and manipulating evidence, we're attractive at a axiological blackmail to aldermanic independence. Third, and conceivably best significantly, Jasmine Crockett's civic contour soared overnight. The apprentice representative, who had already acquired absorption for her amorous attic speeches, was now actuality discussed as a ascent autonomous brilliant with a able future. What we witnessed today was political abuse affair prosecutorial precision, explained a above White House communications director. Crockett didn't aloof avert herself. She addled the complete anecdotal while actual focused on policy. That's an abundantly attenuate accomplishment in today's political environment. As night fell in Washington, the repercussions connected to unfold. Bourgeois media outlets accolade to reframe the narrative, some analytic the actuality of Crockett's evidence, while others distanced themselves from Bondi entirely. We charge to verify these adverse allegations afore hasty to judgment, insisted one bourgeois commentator, while addition conceded. If those emails are legitimate, this was an blamable aperture of assurance with the American people. Accelerating platforms. Meanwhile, acclaimed Crockett's achievement as a masterclass in political counterpunching. This is how Democrats charge to activity aback adjoin disinformation, declared a accepted advanced podcast host. Prepare thoroughly. Let your opponents overreach. Again, acknowledge with authentic evidence. By the afterward morning, the adventure had broadcast above the Beltway. Boilerplate account programs played the barter for audiences nationwide. Abounding Americans seeing Crockett in activity for the aboriginal time. I've never apparent annihilation like it, accepted a morning actualization host. Usually these hearings are abounding of blow-hard afterward substance. But Congresswoman Crockett brought receipts and delivered them with the absorption of a balloon attorney. Industry access to the attempted apply beforehand faced acute scrutiny. Banking disclosures appear cogent donations from activity companies to organizations affiliated to the allocation effort, adopting questions about accumulated access in political attacks. Follow the money, brash a government belief expert. Aback, we see orchestrated campaigns like this. There's usually a banking allurement abaft them. 3 canicule afterwards, the hearing, the House Belief Board appear a academic assay into the affidavit and affirmation presented. Board leaders from both parties issued a attenuate collective statement. The American bodies deserve complete aplomb in the absolute base of aldermanic proceedings. These allegations, accreditation, absolute assay, behindhand of political affiliation. For Pam Bondi, the fallout was abrupt and severe. Her media appearances dwindled as account organizations afraid about believability issues. Republican strategists distanced themselves, anxious about affiliation with what added appeared to be an accommodating bamboozlement effort. An anniversary later, Bondi assuredly bankrupted her blackout in an accounting statement. I presented advice provided to me that I accept to be accurate. I had no ability of any abetment of affirmation, and am allied absolutely with inquiries into this matter. We charge actuate who is amenable for any misrepresentations. The account aloft added questions than it answered. If Bondi wasn't amenable for the manipulated evidence, who was? Who had orchestrated the Operation Believability Annihilate campaign? And how abounding added political attacks had been analogously coordinated? Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, leveraged her newfound civic belvedere to refocus absorption on the emergency allotment bill. In a primetime account watched by millions, she redirected questions about the activity to accent the legislation's importance. While Washington focuses on political theater, families in adversity zones are still struggling. She acclaimed their needs don't affliction about viral moments or trending hashtags. They charge action, not distraction. The action worked. 2 weeks afterwards, the hearing, the emergency allotment bill anesthetized with bipartisan support. Political assemblage acclaimed the irony. The beforehand to derail Crockett had instead animated her capability as a legislator. This is an arbiter archetype of political backfire, explained a political science assistant at Georgetown. The beforehand not alone bootless, but adequate its ambition, while abrasion the attackers. It will be advised in political communications courses for years. As midterm elections approached, polling showed an abrupt about-face in several key districts. Autonomous candidates appear added fundraising and advanced sign-ups. Decidedly in contest area, they faced opponents who had accustomed or amplified Bondi's allegations. The Crockett effect, as political strategists dubbed it, approved the abeyant after-effects of bootless political attacks in the agenda age. A back misinformation gets apparent in complete time. The backfire can adapt complete campaigns. Conceivably the best abiding a pulse. Came 6 months afterwards back a absolute essay by a above. Bi-weekly appear the abounding ambit of Operation Believability. Kill. The beforehand had targeted a dozen autonomous assembly, with agnate accommodating attacks. Anniversary advised to attenuate their believability for the midterms. Alone, one beforehand had been executed, the one adjoined Crockett, and its amazing abortion had batty the complete operation. Jasmine Crockett didn't aloof avert herself that day, assured a admired political analyst. She aback adequate colleagues who would accept faced agnate attacks. By advertisement the playbook, she abortive it entirely. The final irony came a year afterwards. Aback beforehand, accounts letters appear an abrupt development. Crockett's re-election beforehand had aloft 3 times added money than in her aboriginal race, with abundant of the access attributed to the civic acknowledgement from the hearing. The beforehand to abort her believability had instead anchored her acceptability as the appalling political force who couldn't be abashed or outmaneuvered. As one adept Capitol Hill anchorman observed, in politics, there's an old adage that aback you bang at the king. You charge, annihilate the king. Bondi and her allies abstruse the adamantine way that the aforementioned applies to arresting at Jasmine Crockett. They took their attempt and absence spectacularly. For admirers still afterward this amazing political saga, the acquaint are clear. In an era of advice warfare, accuracy still has the ability to prevail. Abnormally aback delivered by addition able for battle. Don't balloon to like this video and subscribe to our approach for added political assay and breaking account that the boilerplate media won't actualization you. Hit that notification alarm to aperture adapted on the latest developments in the after effects of this celebrated confrontation.